Ladies and gentlemen, to bring or to put the icing on the cake this evening, I want you to stretch a little bit. So I want you to stand to your feet and put your hands together as we welcome to the platform at this time the political leader of the Tobago Council, Senator Ancil Dennis.
Thank you very much. Thank you, of course. Let me recognize our Member of Parliament for Tobago West, Honorable Shamfor Kojo Lewis, and for Tobago East, Honorable Ayana Webster Roy, Minority Councillor, Mrs. Petal Daniel Benoit, members of the Tobago Council Executive, Chairman Larry Paul, General Secretary, Vice Chairman Charles Adams, Lady Vice Chairman Nicole Henry, and all other members of the executive of the People's National Movement Tobago Council. As well, let me recognize former members of the Tobago House of Assembly when we had a performing Tobago House of Assembly. Miss Marcelin Melville Jack, Mr. Kwesi Devines, and Mrs. Nadine Stewart Phillips, Mr. Godwin Adams, other members of the People's National Movement, fellow Tobagonians, because I am sure in this room this evening with us, there are persons who are not necessarily members and supporters of the People's National Movement, but a discussion such as this, a conversation on such an important topic, deserves the attention of not only the most serious political entity on the island, but it deserves the attention of all right-thinking Tobagonians. A lot has been said, and because a lot has been said, there is not much for me to say. And I really want to congratulate all the, I wouldn't say speakers, I would say presenters and educators. Of course, the Minority Councillor gave an overview of what took place in the Assembly Legislature last week, Thursday, I think it was, when the Minority Leader took a very important motion, and I'll come back to that. The Member of Parliament for Tobago East spoke about the benefits, PowerPoint presentation and all, and during her presentation, a number of persons were messaging me asking for a copy of that presentation. It was so informative. And the Member of Parliament for Tobago West gave us all the history in terms of where this issue has gone from since back in 2004 with the John Prince Committee until we are here today, now, with two bills in the Parliament engaging the attention of the committee of the whole Parliament. So I will simply want to tell us that the reason we are here, the reason why the People's National Movement here in Tobago, and the reason why I, as political leader here in Tobago, felt the need for us to engage in these conversations is because there is nobody else taking the responsibility in Tobago to speak for the people of Tobago and to advance this very important issue. Because we have a very distracted, a very unprepared Chief Secretary that is not serious, that is not focused, and not only him, his administration by extension. the development and the advancement of the people of Tobago is obviously far from their agenda at this point in time. And therefore, it is only the PNM at this point, and concerning this issue, that is really in a position to speak for the people of Tobago and to ensure that we push this issue to a state of finality. It was the PNM back in 2004, a THA led by Honorable Dr. Orville London, we established a committee back then led by Mr. John Prince, and that committee did work over several years. Consultations after consultations across Tobago, dozens of meetings from Crown Point all the way to Charlottesville, meetings with focus groups, fishermen, business people, etc. And if you do the math, from 2004 to now, it's 20 years. So this means that for the last 20 years, we, the people in Tobago, have been consulting, we have been discussing, we have been talking, we have been arguing, we have even been cussing one another concerning this issue of further autonomy for the people of Tobago, and more specifically, for the government of Tobago. And I want to say to you that there are diverse views, and there will always be diverse views. There are some right here in Tobago who feel that we should break up the union and Tobago should become an independent nation. There are some who believe that we should be a federal system. There are some who believe that we should be a confederation. So there are a number of different opinions out there, and that is what happens when you have a democracy. And that is what we have, a democracy. And people are free to speak, people are free to share their opinions, people are free to engage in discussions and advance their own ideas. But following 20 years of discussions, and it's not that the issue only started in 2004, we can go all the way back to the 1970s, to the establishment of the first Tobago House of Assembly, where we had the THA Act of 1980. We can go to 1996. But the latest thrust, of course, under the PNM began in 2004. And having done that for 20 years, we are now at the point where there are two bills before the Parliament, fortunately for us, that can advance Tobago's situation in a significant way. That is where we are at this point. And I want to back up a bit to 2013 because something very interesting happened in the year 2013. The People's National Movement won the Tobago House of Assembly election 12-0. Days following that election result, the former Chief Secretary, Ho Choi Charles, the late great Ho Choi Charles, called the then Chief Secretary, Dr. Orville London, asking him for a meeting. That was in January of 2013. And that meeting between Mr. Charles and Dr. London happened in the same month of January 2013. I can't remember the exact date, but the meeting happened the same month of the PNM winning the election 12-0. And you can compare and contrast that with the treatment that was meted out to the former Chief Secretary Ho Choi Charles by this current Chief Secretary, where we saw Mr. Charles all over the media complaining that he can't get on to the Chief Secretary, the chief secretary not talking to him, the chief secretary not taking his calls, the chief secretary is telling lies, etc., etc. The PNM chief secretary at the time opened his doors to the former chief secretary, Ho Choi Charles. And the conversation went something like this. In order for us to achieve further significant autonomy for the people of Tobago, then we have to speak or sing or shout with one voice. That was the conversation. And Mr. Charles jokingly said at the time, let us come together and fight for it, and then when we get it, we could go back to fighting one another to see who will manage it. That was the conversation. And that gave birth to the forum, or the Tobago Forum of Political Parties, where for the first time, autonomy was not being pursued by just a PNM or a TOP or a PDP or a TPP or a DAC or a NAR. It was about a Tobago forum representing all the political parties on the island singing the same song. Of course, all of them had different opinions. Mr. Charles at the time liked the idea of a chief secretary being elected separately, or what you may want to call the direct election of a chief secretary, which mirrors the United States of America. We in the PNM felt differently, and there were other persons in the room. Of course, Ashwood Jack at the time, he was just hell-bent on being Kamla Persad Bisessa's puppet. So everybody had their differing opinions. But the idea was to come together where all these minds and all these ideas and all these differences will converge, and we come up with what all of us can agree is not a perfect position, or not a position that will find agreement with everybody, but a position that will be in the best interest of the people of Tobago, and one that can be accepted in the national parliament, because that is critical. Tobago cannot give itself autonomy. The only way to change a law in this country is through the only law-making body in the country, which is the national parliament. So that forum met. They consulted with experts. Some of the brightest legal minds in the country are Tobagonians, by the way, in case you didn't know. Let me say it again. Some of the brightest legal minds in Trinidad and Tobago are Tobagonians. So there were people like Gilbert Peterson, who I believe is senior counsel, perhaps King's counsel by now, senior. Russell Martino, Ingrid Melville, and others. So with the support of some of the best legal advisors in the country, and in collaboration with the people of Tobago, because there were several meetings hosted by this forum, they came up with a bill. And I want to tell the people of Tobago about that bill, because there are some people, and I could tell you I was in the assembly in 2016 when that bill came and when we passed the bill. And the bill was not a perfect bill. But if you listen to that video, you would have heard the senior counsel, Mr. Peterson, making reference to the fact that we must simply put in a clause to trigger the debate and to trigger the conversation and to give the parliamentarians an idea as to what we want and where we are heading. And another thing about those bills is that those bills put forward our best case. So it put forward things that we perhaps knew that we were not going to get. But in any negotiation, and it's a negotiation, when it comes to lawmaking, where you don't have total control, and yes, we have the National Party in government, but guess what? In government, we have 22 seats in the parliament, 22 seats in the House of Representatives. To pass these significant changes to the Constitution, we require 31. So it is a negotiation. So don't let anybody fool you to tell you that you could just get up one morning, or Dr. Rowley could just get up one morning and just give Tobago autonomy. It is a negotiation. So in any negotiation, you put your best proposal forward. It's like you're trying to sell a house. You know the house valued at $3 million. You are prepared to accept 2.5. You're going to advertise it for $2.5 million? You will advertise it for $3 or $3.5 million. And if you get an offer for 2.5, you may say, no, I want 3. You may counter offer with 3. But if you end up with 2.8, is really 2.5 you wanted? So the bills that left Tobago in 2016 proposed, I think it was 9% of the national budget to begin with. Now we know it's a stretch trying to move from 4.03% as your minimum to 9% as your minimum, but we say, hey, guess what? Even if we don't get 9, we might get 6. And the bills before the parliament proposes a minimum of 6.8% of the national budget. And it doesn't have a maximum. So one of the things I heard the Chief Secretary say, another lie, is that the bill proposed by Kamla Prasad Bisesa back in 2013, and I deliberately didn't talk about that, but that bill proposed 8% according to him. And therefore it's better than the 6.8% that the current bills in the parliament proposes. But guess what? When you look at that 2013 bill, and I'm not going to waste time to bring it up to show you, it proposes, or it proposed at the time, a minimum of 6.9% and a maximum of 8%. So they are reading the maximum and trying to tell you, the people of Tobago, that that bill was better. Absolutely false. So we went through that entire period, Joint Select Committee comprising PNM members, UNC members, and independent members. Again, it's a negotiation. You're sitting around a table with people from different sides, because the Joint Select Committee must be a complete representation of the makeup of the parliament. So you must have opposition, you must have government, and you must have independent. And they sat around the table, they held meetings after meetings, they consulted experts, they consulted legal experts, maritime experts, economic experts, financial experts, you name it. And then eventually they came to the people of Trinidad and the people of Tobago for further consultations. And you know how long that went on for? Because as I said, the bill in the THA was passed in 2016 and it was sent to the cabinet. That was one of the final acts of Chief Secretary London at the time. And from there, from the cabinet, it was placed in the Joint Select Committee unchanged. Another lie they will tell you, and it's just unfortunate that we have to spend a lot of time correcting lies and misinformation. Another lie they will tell you is that Prime Minister Dr. Rowley changed the bills. That is absolutely false. The bills went, or the bill, because it was one bill, went to the cabinet simply because the Tobago House of Assembly Act prescribes that in order to pass anything legislatively, it must go to the cabinet, and then the cabinet will take it to the parliament. So the bill went from the cabinet to the parliament unchanged. Not even the grammatical errors were fixed. And then the Joint Select Committee did its work over a number of years, from 2016 up until 2021. That was 5 years of work. So 20 plus 5 in the parliament, 25 years. And we are here today. Now, I do not expect that the bills that are currently in the parliament will find the approval of every single Tobagonian. Neither do I expect that the bills in the parliament will find the approval of every PNM supporter. There are people in the PNM who disagree with some elements of the bill. But I can stand here this evening and say to you, the people of Tobago, that these bills, as are proposed right now in the parliament, will change the circumstances of Tobago in a significant way. And the first thing I want to tell us about, I'll leave the money for last, is the lawmaking powers. Because in case you did not know, yes, we are called a legislature. They call it the Assembly Legislature. But I want to tell you that this so-called legislature, as we speak now, cannot make one law. So bring up the first document, and I want to read for you, and this is from section 29 of the Tobago House of Assembly Act. And it says, in the exercise of its powers under the Act, the Assembly may propose and adopt bills in relation to the matters for which it is responsible under section 25. Such bills shall be debated in the Assembly in accordance with its standing orders, and if adopted, shall be transmitted by the Chief Secretary to the Secretary to Cabinet with a request for its introduction into Parliament for enactment into law in accordance with Section 61 of the Constitution. And I wouldn't even bother to read the rest. Take it down. So, currently, your Tobago House of Assembly, the most we can do is adopt a bill, meaning we pass it in the Assembly and it goes to the Cabinet. And then the Cabinet, if they decide to, will send it to the Parliament, where the law will be made or passed for you. And I can tell you from experience as Chief Secretary, when I was your Chief Secretary, when you had a proper Chief Secretary, and even previously under Mr. London, several bills were sent to Parliament. I don't know, well, to Cabinet. I don't know if they're still in Cabinet. I don't know if they went to Parliament. I don't know if they got lost on the inter-island transportation system. They never became law. So as Chief Secretary in 2012, 20, I think it was, might have been 2021, we discovered, well, it wasn't even a discovery because it's a well-known issue as it relates to the usage and the safe usage of the marine park, the one at Boko. That is issue number one. The other issue had to do, because associated with the usage, is the protection of sensitive marine areas in Tobago. So as Chief Secretary, we met as a team. We decided that in order to fix this issue, some kind of legislative intervention was required at the time. So we consulted the various stakeholders. We pulled together the best legal minds in the Tobago House of Assembly. And we had a team led by the Senior State Counsel, Miss Leslie Gray. I think she's still there. And that team went and they did the work, they did the research, hard work for a period of months. And we drafted what we consider to be a very good bill that dealt with a number of areas. The bill was even designed to empower the Tobago House of Assembly to identify other marine sensitive areas as marine parks. So one, we were going to be able to protect the space. We were going to be able to determine how it is used. We were going to be able to regulate those areas and implement a fee structure. We were going to be able to deal with the issue of touting and the lawless, embarrassing behavior that takes place from time to time on the Boko Reef, on some of those reef boats. We would have been able to identify even that nice reef in Speyside and the reef in Culloden and other reefs in Tobago. We would have been able to even identify those areas as protected areas as well, rather than having to wait for somebody from Trinidad to do it for us. Don't ask me where that bill is because I don't know. So the current Tobago House of Assembly Act does not allow the government, the assemblymen that you elect, to pass and make any law for the good governance and order of Tobago as an island. Now, interestingly, give me the next document. So I already told you that in my experience, that bill was drafted. It went to the cabinet. I don't know if it got to the parliament, but it is still not a law, and that is since 2021. This excerpt is from the Municipal Corporations Act, and this is section 221. Bylaws, rules, and regulations. So in addition to any other bylaws, rules, or regulations which a council is expressly authorized to make under this act, a council may make such bylaws, rules, and regulations as it seems proper for the good rule and government of the municipality and for the prevention and suppression of nuisances not already punishable in a summary manner by virtue of any written law. Bylaws, rules, or regulations shall not be made, altered, amended, or repealed unless at least the prescribed number of the members of the council is present and vote. The number of members of the council prescribed to be present and to vote for the purpose of this subsection shall be as set out in the third schedule or in an order made pursuant to section 5.2. Let me read from my phone before I need glasses by tomorrow. So I'll skip to 223 because that is the important part. Bylaws, rules, or regulations made by a council shall not take effect unless and until they have been confirmed by the president. Now that is bylaws, of course. It is not as far-reaching as laws. But the point I'm making here is that a municipal corporation in Trinidad is empowered to make at least bylaws without the involvement of any cabinet or any parliament. It's between the council and the president, full stop. The current Tobago House of Assembly Act does not empower the THA to even do that. And then some people will want to tell the people of Tobago in the most irresponsible and dangerous way that the current act, what we have now, is better than the 2 bills in Parliament. Next document. So this is what the particular bill that amends the Constitution, because there are 2 bills, one to amend several clauses in the Constitution, and another bill to treat with the arrangements for the Tobago Island government, the establishment and the arrangements of the Tobago Island government. So this part of it speaks to a Tobago legislature, and it says, there shall be a Tobago legislature which shall consist of the President and the House of Assembly. Subject to Section 5 and 53(2) and subsection 3 and 4, the Tobago legislature shall have power to make laws for the peace, order, and good government of Tobago. And I will stop there. So what we have, you could take it down, is that these bills currently before the Parliament is moving Tobago's governance from its present state, where the people that you elect into office cannot make one law for you right now. And the bill proposes the establishment for the first time of a Tobago legislature. And this mirrors the national parliament. Because the parliament is your upper house, your lower house, which is, well, the lower house is the House of Representatives, the upper house is the Senate, and you have the president. Parliament passes the law. It starts off in the lower house most times, it moves to the upper house, gets the approval, and then the president gives her stamp of approval. These bills will place Tobago in the same exact position where the people that we elect can go to the House, engage in real debates, treat with issues affecting the people of Tobago, draft bills, debate those bills, and pass laws into effect for the good governance and order of the island of Tobago. Currently, that cannot happen. So you know what we do? We go to the House and we debate motions. Motion after motion. And if you examine the track record of this current assembly, you'll realize that they will go and debate motions, and the motions will resolve to do certain things, and they never get done. And it gives me the impression that they just wait for every 4th Thursday to come and realize, oh shucks, we have to put a motion in the House. And they just draft anything, drop it in the House, or drop it for the clerk of the assembly. It goes on the order paper, and they go and debate. And that debate has little to no effect on Tobago and the people of Tobago, because they don't even fulfill the things that the motion approved. The last motion approved that you all establish a bipartisan arrangement to ensure that we could have a meeting of the minds between the elected assembly officials and the parliamentarians at the national level concerning autonomy issue. Motions were debated in the past about education and establishing committees to do different things. None of it gets done. So every month, our assemblymen and councillors go to the house to basically waste time. And of course, in between, they travel the world at your expense, very little results, and that is what we have taking place for governance. This bill that proposes to enhance our arrangement to the extent of having a legislature will give them serious work to do. I have no confidence they will do it, but at least they will have the responsibility to do it. In addition to that, the bill will give Tobago additional areas of responsibilities, and I wouldn't go into that long list. But of course, the most contentious argument now in the Tobago space, especially since we just had the budget exercise, is the money and how much money is available to the people of Tobago, or to the government of Tobago, as they like to call themselves. Currently, the minimum is 4.03%. Most times you get around 4.3, 4.37% thereabout. The only thing that will guarantee Tobago a greater share of the national budget is a changing of the law. Because the fact remains that whether it's PNM in the central government or UNC in the central government, the allocation is always around that mark, 4.3 something percent thereabout. The only difference is that when PNM in charge, you get a little more through the central government, like the airport and the police stations and the Roxborough Hospital and the Sandals that was being proposed. We missed the Sandals opportunity, but there's still a 5-star hotel resort on the cards, the marina. The central government don't necessarily have to do those things for the people of Tobago. But it is because of the good graces of our PNM government, led by a Tobago-born Prime Minister, that we had the opportunity for all those developments to come through the central government. And if you don't me do the comparison, during the period 2010 to 2015, what did Tobago get from the People's Partnership? The government that spent the most money in this country. At one point, they ran a deficit budget of some $15 billion, even in periods of high oil prices, because the budget exceeded $65 billion on some occasions. What did Tobago get? Right? The 2 police stations that Prime Minister Manning had put on the table, they canceled those projects. We got a meteorological center. That is a building close to the airport runway, somewhere between the terminal building and the fire station. That was it. What else did we get during that period? But government change, Tobago-born Prime Minister, airport, 2 ferries, Sandals, marina, Marriott, police stations, etc. Hospital, fire station, etc. So the only way to ensure that Tobago gets more, because some of these disingenuous people we have in the THA will tell you that if the government wants, they could give Tobago 6.8% of the national budget. We don't want a situation where it's about if the government wants. We want a situation where they are duty-bound and bound by the law to give us a higher percentage of the national budget. And the only way that can happen is if the law is changed. And the law that is before the parliament moves the minimum from 4.03% to 6.8%. Now, what does that mean? It means that the allocation given last month by the Minister of Finance of $2.599 billion would have been $4.06 billion. Right? Now, let me work out a little maths quickly. Now, obviously, if you get additional responsibilities, you will have to create some additional divisions. Now, in my mind, I've looked at that bill and I've determined that if I am operating as a PNM Chief Secretary under that new arrangement, I need no more than 4 additional divisions. Right? Of course, you're going to need one for legal affairs. You might need one for public administration. And maybe a couple other areas. Right? The cabinet at the national level. This current government is functioning with what, 20-something ministers? Or 20-something ministries? The People's Partnership had about 40 ministries. So there is no need, even with the additional responsibility, to expand your recurrent expenditure in any significant way. So I did the maths. Even with the additional responsibilities and the need to establish additional divisions to administrate those responsibilities, which will require additional staff, your recurrent expenditure still should not exceed $2.5 billion. And therefore, it means that you will have $1.5 billion available for development. Over the last 10 years, the figure has been between $200 and $400 million. But there are people who will tell us that the bills in the parliament are not better than the current Tobago House of Assembly Act. So they want you to believe that an additional $1.5 billion or an additional $1 billion for development expenditure in Tobago is not something that we should grasp at and ensure that we get. I'll tell you what that means for Tobago, because you're experiencing it right now. Between 2001 to 2021, 99% of your development money used to be spent in Tobago. Farley and his gang of thieves came in and they decided they're going to sell out Tobago. Sell out every single project, a Trinidad contractor. Any project over $10 million. And I'm sure if I take the barrier lower to $5 million, I will still be correct. Every single project is being done by a Trinidad contractor who does not employ Tobagonians, who does not rent his equipment from Tobagonians, and who does not reinvest his profits in Tobago. So that money gone. And people are beginning to understand how important that spend, as small as it was, because although the allocation was $200-300 million, we still used to find a way to spend at least $500 million per year on development in Tobago, because you still have to pave your roads, you have to fix the drains, you have to build your community centers, you have to build your cultural complex, you have to build your sporting facilities. And we did all of that across Tobago with mostly Tobago companies, Tobago contractors, utilizing Tobago skills and Tobago labor. So now that all the thing has been sold out to people from Trinidad, you get to understand the importance of that development spend in Tobago. Because we have to admit, our tourism is not where we want it to be yet. Our agriculture is not where we want it to be yet. So the primary driver of economic activity in Tobago is the Tobago House of Assembly that spurs on a construction sector. And if you remove that from Tobago, the economy will slow down, people will feel the pinch, people will start to complain, the place slow, the place dead, the place heavy. That is what is taking place in Tobago. Can you imagine a situation where you have at least minimum $1.5 billion per year in development money being circulated in the Tobago space? Now, I'm not saying that the THA should be the only driver of economic development. Of course, under the PNM, we're going to ensure that we attract the necessary investment to fix tourism. Under the PNM, we will ensure that we restart that agricultural revival that was taking place in 2020 during the pandemic, and we will ensure that we improve those sectors. But we must understand that the Tobago House of Assembly, or the government in Tobago, based on how it spends the money allocated to it, can either make or break the economy of Tobago and the people of Tobago by extension. So these bills will turn $200, $300, $400 million into over $1.5 billion. And I want you to consider that figure and understand what it will mean for Tobago's development and for Tobago's economy. So the question is, should we not accept that? Should we not support that as Tobagonians? Should we not want that for the people of Tobago? Should we not welcome that change at this point in time? Because the choice is clear. It is either we support the bills or we do not. And if we do not support the bills, then what are we replacing it with? Because to not support the bills, I will tell you what it will mean. It will mean two things. If we don't support the bills, it will mean, number one, we will continue to exist under Act 40 of 1996. Our assemblymen will continue to go to the legislature to just debate motions and waste time. No lawmaking powers. We will continue to operate with 4.3% thereabout of the national budget. So all of that will continue because of the continued operations under Act 40 of 1996. And secondly, it will mean that we will spend another 20 years, this one in this corner arguing about self-government, this one in the next corner arguing about secession, this one in the next corner arguing about confederation, this one up in the sky arguing about federation, and everybody continue to talk amongst ourselves while the governance of Tobago goes nowhere. Is that what we want? Now, I could tell you what I am suggesting in closing. It's about time. In closing, I am suggesting that the people of Tobago rally behind this process and support the bills now. And to do that, because I said, I can speak for the 22 votes that the PNM have in the parliament. As a deputy political leader of the PNM, I can tell you that support for those bills will come from 22 PNM members in the lower house. So we must call on Farley Augustine and his friends to talk to the UNC, because the UNC will not listen to me. They will not listen to any member of parliament on the government side. You know who they will listen to from Tobago? Farley Augustine. And I will tell you why I say this. As Chief Secretary, Back then, I went to the parliament to listen to the debate when those bills were first introduced. And every single UNC speaker got up and lied on the people of Tobago. Lied about there were insufficient consultations, and the people of Tobago don't want this, and the people of Tobago don't want that. You know where they got that from? Farley and Ho Choi. The MP for Tobago West told you about the letter that was written during the debate, asking for the direct, imagine we agreed that that is your thing. Direct election of a chief secretary, that is your thing. You could argue that next time. But for now, this is what we are proposing as a team. We sat, we discussed it, we agreed that you now coming to reintroduce that and putting that as a basis for encouraging the UNC to not support the bills. Ridiculous. So I'm calling on this current THA, led by Farley Augustine, to tell their friends in the UNC to support the bills, vote for the bills. And if in fact you have meaningful contributions to make by the way of suggestions for amendments, then go to the parliament, which you are being paid to do, and contribute to such. And we, the people of Tobago, must ensure that we pressure our THA representatives, because we're paying them to represent us. And it comes down to either we remain with Act 40 of 1996 for the foreseeable future, or we take the advancement that is before us now. Because we will continue to argue, even with this change, if we get it, and I'm hoping we get it, the argument and the discussion will continue. Because there are some who will still feel that we ain't get enough and we want more. No problem. There are some who will feel that we need a federal type arrangement. No problem. You continue to argue that. Because I can tell you, even in the United Kingdom, that has gone through an incremental process of changes in the arrangements with the various jurisdictions, Scotland, Wales, etc. Even they, as we speak, the people of Scotland will tell you they want more autonomy. The people of Wales will tell you they want more autonomy. And there are some in those jurisdictions who will say they want independence. No problem with that. That's democracy. That's human nature. But in the meantime, while you argue for your federal system and your 15% of the national budget, and there are some who will tell you that we should split the country in half, Trinidad should get half the money, and Tobago should get half the money, no problem. You could argue that if you want. I will not support you. But in the meantime, we have an opportunity right before us to advance our situation in a significant way. And I'm saying you could continue with your arguments, you could continue with your debate, but ensure that we do right by the people of Tobago on this occasion and support the two bills that are before the Parliament. Because I can tell you that I intend to sit as Chief Secretary again with a PNM team. And I do not intend to go back to a legislature under the same arrangements provided now in Act 40 of 1996, where in order for me to make a law, well, for the Assembly to make a law, in order for us to change anything significant, legislatively that is, we still have to debate, pass a bill, send that bill to cabinet, and hope that the cabinet send it to parliament, and then hope that the parliament support it into law. I don't want that to happen. I am saying as well that when me and a PNM team return to the governance of Tobago, we do not want to be confined to $2.5 billion. $4 billion sounds like a good number to work with for now. We could argue for more in the future. We could argue for more in the future. So I'm saying to us that these conversations will continue, because I'm saying we have an opportunity to improve. Whether you consider the improvement significant or not, I consider it significant. Especially, and some may not agree with me for saying this, but the lawmaking powers is even more important than the money. We need to have the powers to make laws for the people of Tobago and for the good governance of Tobago immediately. Imagine you have a chief secretary, and this one mannish, very mannish, and out of place. You have a chief secretary, and your chief secretary and his executive cannot even pass a law. That has to change immediately. And the only way to change that immediately is by supporting these bills. The alternative to that, no, not chaos and confusion, we haven't that already. The alternative to not passing the bills is at least another 20 years. So I'm calling on Farley to tell your friends in the UNC, especially your drinking partner, Rudal Munilal, to go to the parliament and support the bills that will give Tobago additional resources, that will give Tobago additional responsibilities, that will give Tobago the lawmaking powers that we require to make laws for the good governance and the order of Tobago, and then we could fight for more later on. And I'm saying only when we do that, then we'll be able to say, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, great is Tobago, and we have prevailed.
Let's put our hands together again for the political leader.